Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me on the Slice of Healthcare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Taylor. Today I'm joined by the founder and CEO of DOCPACE, Shelby Sanderford. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Jared. I'm excited to be here.
Excited for us to get chatting. Glad that we're able to have you on. I'd love if we could just kind of kick things off with you giving the audience a little bit about your background, and then we'll talk more about DocPace.
That sounds great. Well, I'm Shelby Sanderford, founder of DocPace. We're a data analytics company that provides a tool for healthcare practices to improve workflow and operations by coordinating appointment cycles so that providers can see more patients and patients don't have to wait for their appointment. My background really is in applied physiology and enterprise. Always was more interested in kind of the healthcare side of things, and actually thought I wanted to be a healthcare provider myself. And then got uh, introduced to more of the operational business side of healthcare, and found myself back in school. Got my master's degree at Tulane University in business. Um, Wrapped that up in 2017 and now have been full time working on DocPace.
How'd you come up with the name?
Well, that's a great question. What we're doing at DocPace is actually tracking the doctor's pace and the patient's pace throughout the day. And so, put those two words together. But really, what it came down to was trying to find a .com URL. That's not so easy these days.
Yeah, it is difficult, and there's other options nowadays, but I feel like a lot of the search engines still don't necessarily give those priority in the rankings, right? We're getting there. Eventually, I think it won't be crazy for everyone to have a random URL, but sometimes even when you enter it on a website, because I have a couple of them, they're like, "This isn't a website. Like you can't do dot healthy or whatever it was, right? Like that we don't accept this." But yeah, completely understand. I just like to always know where the name came from, but makes sense. So you kind of told us a little bit about yourself. We always ask when someone comes on the podcast, because we like to keep these things short and sweet. Really three things: the why, how, what of the company. I think it's important for your customers, prospective investors, partners, etc., to understand those three things whenever they're dealing with a company. So if you could share that, we'd be much appreciated.
So in healthcare today, most practices are using what I call traditional block scheduling, where each patient gets a 15 or 30-minute slot, and that time typically accounts for how much time the patient needs with the provider. However, if you've been to the doctor, you know it's a process to see the provider. You actually have to go through an entire appointment cycle from the time you arrive to the time you leave, doing things like paperwork, intake with the nurse, and perhaps some tests before the doctor actually sees you. Well, this whole portion of the appointment is not really accounted for with scheduling used today, and it creates a problem. That problem is one most of us are probably familiar with: waiting in a waiting room. In fact, patients spend about 15 billion minutes waiting in a waiting room each year. But this also creates a problem for healthcare providers, and that's that these inefficiencies actually cause them to lose anywhere from 10 to 20% of potential patient time. And so, what we're doing with DocPace is actually giving doctors that time back so that it can be put to better use. And that's doing what they do best, taking care of our patient population.
Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate that. And one of the things that you and I kind of wanted to touch base on today is this kind of main problem, their main cause of patient wait time. Can we go into that a little bit? And then, as a kind of a second piece to it, why is it wrong to blame providers when these wait times occur?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's, a common one that we hear is from the healthcare providers. They're often getting kind of penalized and pressured to, maybe hurry through their day because there is some backlog of patients. And really, it's just a logistics and coordination challenge. And that's what ends up being kind of the root cause of this. It's not always the providers that should be getting blamed for this. And that's what we've really learned from kind of digging into historical schedule information and seeing what we can extract from, the story the data is telling us. So um, if you think about it, when you go through an appointment process, let's say you go through 10 steps, each provider is seeing about 25 patients a day. And, in a practice, there could be 10 providers that are working in a day. We're talking about trying to coordinate like thousands and thousands of events. And that's really just unrealistic to think that front office staff and whoever's handling like operations and management can really handle and coordinate all of that. And so I think um, that's where there's a big opportunity to kind of leverage technology and the capabilities of what like digital tools can do for us, help coordinate all those events and make sure things run smoothly.
Absolutely. Uh, can you dive into, Shelby, a little bit about what's next for DocPace, like what's on the horizon?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have some exciting new features that we'll be releasing next month, one of which is our advanced analytics dashboard. And that will empower our users to really make informed operational decisions based on data. So, sharing information with them, like, how much extra available time each provider has in a day to see patients or how many additional patients they could potentially be scheduling in a day, that sort of information to help them improve current operations. So we're very excited about releasing that in the very near future.
We look forward to hearing more about that. And just so the audience knows, by the way, this is Shelby's intro podcast, first time on Slice of Healthcare. The goal would be to have you back on to kind of talk more about what's happening, give us a little bit of an update, and also cover some of the issues that are happening within your space. But Shelby, I want to thank you once again for being a guest on the podcast today. Super helpful to kind of hear more about what you're building and some of the main problems you're tackling, and wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you so much for having me here today, Jared.